Good evening and welcome to Songs and Sit Downs. Thank you so much for joining us on this, our 18th show of the series. The weather's a little cooler this week, thankfully, and the kids are finally back at school. Not all of them, of course, at least not in the usual sense, as a great many children are still being homeschooled because of the COVID situation, and I know that's got to be tough on parents. And if those parents, any of those parents, are watching tonight, I'd just like to offer some advice. Get the right essential back to school supplies. And you're probably thinking, yeah, we know that's obvious, but I'm not talking about for the kids. I'm talking about the essential back to school supplies for you, the parents. Here's an example of what I'm talking about. Yeah, so there it is. That should probably get you through week one if you ration. And maybe for week two. Oh, there for week two. That might last you. Actually, some people I grew up with, that might only last about 2 days. But I actually had a teacher in school that used to carry a whiskey flask in his pocket in the classroom, just to get him through the day. He had a really strong North of Ireland accent, kind of like Liam Neeson. I have a particular set of skills. And that would have been fine, except he was my French teacher, and he was the only frame of reference for French pronunciation that I had. So now, if I meet a beautiful woman from Paris, I can say in the most romantic language in the world, Voulez-vous coucher avec moi ce soir? Speaking of French speakers, I just recently found out that our very own JJ Shock here at Divine Rebel Music and Songs and Sit Downs is actually a fluent French speaker. Although I've never actually heard or seen any proof of it myself. So why don't we go to Divine Rebel Music headquarters out there in Van Nuys right now and see if we can get him to say a few words. JJ, comment
Bonjour.
allez-vous?
Bonjour, ça va?
Oh, that sounded very impressive. Oh,
C'est incroyable, hein?
oh wow, and you even got the hand gestures. You're like a native.
Mais oui.
Well, it's good to see you guys, and you having a good day?
Yeah, it's hot again. It's getting hotter again.
Yeah.
So, not gonna enjoy that, but that's okay.
Yeah. Well, it was a cooler day compared to what it was last week. As long as
Yeah.
we're not in the 90s, we're pretty good, right?
It's
So
gonna-
we
it's gonna
we got
get
an
in the
exciting
hundreds,
show
Owen.
coming up, and you guys know that. But we got a couple of announcements, and then we're going to get to the
Yes.
good stuff. So
Yes, yes. So, everybody, thank you once again for everyone who has subscribed to both of our YouTube pages,
Yes.
the Divine Rebel Music and Owen Dara. So we are still looking for subscribers, as our goal is to get to 1,000 subscribers, right? So at that point we can monetize, and we wouldn't have to ask for tips from all of you wonderful people.
that's right. And
Right.
and but at this point, we do ask for tips.
Yes.
Although we should say it's not mandatory. We're happy to have you with us, whoever is with us right now.
That's
But we
right.
did create this show, Songs and Sit Downs, in part as a means to fill the deficit created by the lack of live work available to artists as a result of COVID-19. And so, as many of you out there know, we have a very hard-working team who also happen to be artists themselves, adversely affected by the ongoing closure of music venues. And as I always say, as we always say, we very much appreciate your being here. But if you do choose and you have the means, all tips are appreciated, and they do help support our musical guest as well as our hard-working team. And of course, if tipping's not within your means, we're just more than happy to have you with us. So don't go anywhere. You're going to be happy you stuck around
That's
this evening, I promise. So,
And I will go ahead and put both links in the comments.
fantastic. Thank you, Dolly, and thank you, JJ. Thank you, both of you, for all the hard work you do. And
you.
au revoir.
Au revoir.
Is my accent good? I got the hand gesture.
Ciao.
Ciao. Okay. A lot of people might think that's French. We'll go with that. Thank you, guys.
right.
It's good to see you. We'll
right,
talk to
bye.
you a little bit later on. So we also, as you know, we're a music-based program, and we like to promote upcoming shows that are going around the Los Angeles area and beyond in live music venues. And let me just have a look at the gig guide right here. Let me see. Oh yeah, there are no live shows going on around Los Angeles. And did you ever think that you'd hear me say that? Well, if you've tuned into the show before, You've known that I'm going to say that because this is the 18th show, and it's the 18th time that we've done that joke, and we said, you know what, let's just keep doing it until such time as live music comes back with the same piece of paper. 18 times. We're actually going to take a little break in September, so this, in fact, is the season finale for now. So I'm glad you're with us tonight. It's going to be a shorter show than usual, but it's going to be a good one. I want to talk a little bit about upcoming Facebook events that we're going to talk about later in the show. And also, we have a sponsor that we'd like to mention called Irish Arts and Entertainment. It's a great publication that's been helping us by promoting our show and sharing on its network about what we've been doing here at Songs and Sit Downs. And they're offering a reduced rate subscription and other benefits to our viewers for just $20 a year. And only $12 if you're a senior or a student. Information about how to contact them is going to be in the comments. And of course, we thank them, as always, for their ongoing support of Songs and Sit Downs. As I said, we have a slightly different format for the show tonight. We have our first guest as usual, and what a wonderful guest she is. I'll tell you a little bit more about her in just a moment. But instead of a featured musical act, we're going to show a short interview with Pat Nason and JJ Shock, who collaborated on the recording of a very excellent song written by Pat called A Long Night Coming. And immediately following that, we'll be presenting the world premiere of the official, and might I say, really wonderful video that song accompanies. And it was also created by JJ Shock with a little bit of input from Pat himself. So the show will be a little shorter than usual, but whatever we may lack in quantity, we will most certainly make up for in quality. Starting with our first guest, Virginia Williams, an actress and a singer originally from Memphis, Tennessee, and currently living in Los Angeles. She started her career on the cult TV series Strangers with Candy, and since then she's appeared in well over 100 episodes of primetime television, including on shows like Modern Family, How I Met Your Mother, NCIS, I should say, Drop Dead Diva, and Girlfriend's Guide to Divorce. She's recently completed playing the role of Charity on the TV series Charmed, and she played CJ on 4 seasons of the hit series Fuller House. She's also well known for her starring role as Lauren Reed on Fairly Legal and as Bianca on the series Monarch Cove. Currently, Virginia is playing one of the starring roles on the newly released and critically acclaimed Netflix series Teenage Bounty Hunters. And if you haven't seen that show yet, believe me, it's well worth checking out. It's exciting, it's funny, it's moving, highly entertaining, and Virginia Williams absolutely shines in her role as Debbie Wesley. Not only has Virginia starred in many a TV show, as we mentioned, she has also had memorable roles in numerous films, including Woodlawn, The Culling, Honeymoon with Mom, Reading, Writing and Romance, and Revenge of the Bridesmaids. As a singer, she has performed on multiple movie soundtracks, and in 2020, just this year, on a list that totaled just 75 songs in the running for an Oscar for Best Original Song, Virginia was a featured vocalist on 4 of those songs. That's right, 4 songs out of just 75. Other vocalists on that list included Beyoncé, Taylor Swift, Pharrell Williams, and Elton John. We're absolutely delighted to have her here on the program this evening. Please welcome Virginia Williams.
Hi.
Well, hi, Virginia. How are you?
I'm great, Owen. How are you?
Well, I'm very well, thank you. It's so nice to see you. And you look all nice and relaxed in your home, dressed in blue.
Yes.
So I wanted to go back to the beginning. As I said in my introduction, you started your career on Strangers with Candy. Now, it's a show that I've never seen, but strangely, I keep hearing about it because it's hugely popular with a certain group of people that have stayed true to being fans of the show for all these years. And that was your first acting job?
Yes. My first acting job outside of commercial work or soap opera work. So I was on One Life to Live when I was a senior in high school. I would fly back and forth from Memphis to New York and do that. But then I took time off from professional acting to get my all of my training. And I went to Fordham at Lincoln Center and studied in England a bit, and then came back. And then my senior year, I started auditioning again and got this fantastic recurring on Strangers with Candy. It just followed
Wow.
me to this day. The people who
Yeah.
love that show love that show.
I know that's what I keep hearing. People talk about you got to see Strangers with Candy, and of course Paul Rudd was on there, and I think you were friends with Winona Ryder, your character, I believe, on that.
Yes, the finale episode, Winona and I play like the popular girls that, or the
Wow.
mean girls that make over. Amy Sedaris played Jerry Blank on the show. She's the lead, but it had just really incredible people on it. Stephen Colbert
Hmm.
wrote it with
Hmm.
Amy, and yeah, it was a blast of a show. It was really fun.
Of course, and that was beginnings for someone like Stephen Colbert. I mean, he wasn't the person that he is now that
No,
we know as a household name. So, wow, a
no,
lot
this
of
was in
great talent started
2000.
on that.
Yeah, this was 2000, 2001, I believe, were the seasons that I was on. Yeah.
Wow, fantastic. And of course, as you said, you did some study in England also. You actually studied at BAMDA.
BADA, the British
Uh-huh.
American Drama Academy
Hmm.
in London, and
Hmm.
then studied at Oxford University at Balliol College, got my Shakespeare training there.
Wow, how do you find the Shakespeare training helps you now? Does it help you in the acting roles that you do?
No, not really.
Okay. Well, they say if you can do Shakespeare, you can do anything. So I just wonder when you're preparing for a role like, I mean, the role you play on Teenage Bounty Hunters is just
Thank you.
phenomenal. I just can't believe the arc of your character. And of course, we
Thank
won't give
you.
too much away, but when you're preparing for a role like that, do you go back to your training from all those years ago, or does it come sort of organically now?
A bit of both.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely, I mean, I joke saying that the Shakespeare training didn't, yes, of course.
Mm-hmm.
I worked with some incredible teachers and just wonderful actors. I mean, our master classes were with Fiona Shaw and Ian
Wow.
McKellen. And I mean, it was extraordinary.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I did learn a lot from being there. I just joke around, when you first come out to LA and you're in your early to mid 20s and you're auditioning for Gilmore Girls. No, it didn't really
Right.
come into come in handy that much. They're like, just
Yeah,
just
your
do nothing,
Guinevere
just
doesn't
talk
really
fast.
your Guinevere doesn't kick in. Oh, and look at this. This, of course, is you in Teenage Bounty Hunters, right?
Yeah, it
Oh
is.
my God, this is.
Here's
I think this is
Gabby.
probably the pilot episode.
It is. I know what moment that is. We're in the kitchen, and I've just
Yeah.
found out that Sterling was made fellowship leader. I
Uh-huh.
remember the scene.
Wow, it's a good introduction to your character. Actually, it just shows you as so much fun. And what's interesting about that is, and there's of course that's you with your TV husband. Are you guys friends on the
Yep.
show?
Oh my gosh. So Mackenzie Aston plays
Hmm.
Anderson, my husband, and he just could not be more of a class act, kind human being. It was just an absolute delight going to work with him. He just could not be kinder and more giving, and I love him to bits. I miss him. It's hard. We all live in different places. I'm in LA.
Hmm.
Kadeem Hardison is also in Los Angeles, but of course everyone's on lockdown with COVID. But the two ladies that play my daughters, they're in Canada and New York, and then Mac is in Baltimore. So none of us get to see each other, but we all have a text chain and we text daily.
Oh,
So we're
that's great.
also quite close.
So
Yeah.
it's a good vibe on set, and you can kind of see that there's chemistry between the cast. It's like you all
Yeah.
seem to like each other. Interesting. You have to give some cutting looks to some of your fellow cast members, and I wonder how do you prepare for those scenes? Like there's one scene where there's you and your husband, and then there's another couple, and you're sitting in the living room, and it is just tense. I think it's around the middle of
Uh,
maybe season 5 or something, and I'm going, how do they prepare for that role if they actually like each other?
oh, that's funny. Yeah, that was a really fun scene. We did a
Hmm.
lot of improving that day,
That's
as
what I was
I
going to ask.
recall. And I really liked the other couple that we
Hmm.
were playing with. They only, I think each of them had a couple of episodes with us. They were our friends, but they were a lot of fun to play with and work with. And no, Mac and I like each other so much. We had to not like each other in that scene, and it was kind of hard.
Oh yeah, because I mean, and it's so organic, and it must have been so much fun to have people that actually like each other be in the room and then look like they're really just giving each other cutting looks, and it's so subtle. And I'm glad that you said that there was some improv involved in that because I wanted to ask you if that's how they set it up because it does seem like it's all happening in the moment and it's beautifully edited and acted. Now, speaking of characters that you've played, Lauren Reed in Fairly Legal. Now, this is a character that, from what I know of you, is very different to you in real life. And she was written, as far as I understand, as a thorn in the side for the other lead character in the show, played by Sarah Shahi. So for you, and there you are, playing, the hotshot lawyer, but also what I see, or what I've seen of the show, it seems that a lot of layers were in your acting rather than in the writing. Did you have to do a lot of work on your character to bring those layers in?
Wow. Well, thank you. And yes, I mean, they were wonderful writers on that show as well. And just to backtrack with Teenage Bounty Hunters, interestingly, we do some improv, but for the most part, everything's written. Those writers are just witty and quick. And so it makes our job pretty easy to memorize it. And occasionally we go off cuff, but for the most part, it's just written extraordinarily well. For Fairly Legal, I mean, the writers were fantastic as well. But yes, I found that to be a more challenging role, as she was, I think, intended to be a lot more one-dimensional. And I just really had a fun time trying to figure out how to humanize this Ice Queen, and bring as much as I could to her. I just think it's so much more interesting. I play the bad guy a lot, and I just don't have fun watching bad guys if I don't find things that are redeemable about them and things that I want to love about them. And you have to be torn as a viewer of sometimes rooting for them, or it's no fun to watch, in my opinion. I don't watch.
Yeah, and there's so many subtleties in your performance that actually are true to a character that you've created. I noticed that, sometimes you would come to a doorway and you would stop and take a breath and a moment before you went through. Was that a character choice that you made, or was it something that you were directed to do?
I'd have to know about a specific moment, but I would say in general, something like that would be just an actor's moment. Trying to find little places. I watched something the other night on TV, and I won't even say what it was on, but it was a TV show that I watched. Well, I'll tell you, it was Kate Blanchett in Mrs. America. And she just had an interesting thing. She was leaving the room, and as she's leaving, she very quickly just straightens out a picture in her husband's office. And I've actually, as an actor, I've done that move many times to portray something about a character, generally if she's someone who likes things very tidy or neat. There's just those little moments as an actor you try to bring to when the camera may be on you, maybe off you, doesn't matter. Just do you sort of straighten. Oh, I remember there was a moment in Fairly Legal I really enjoyed. We're sitting at dinner, and it gave me something to do as an actor. I had Lauren just be sort of obsessed with getting the place setting correct, like straightening the placemat and getting the forks in the right place. And it's not a big thing, and look, the camera may or may not catch it. It's not about that moment, but the viewer might be able to catch just a glimpse of who this person is and what makes her anxious and what doesn't. And
right, and I'm sure it helps your fellow actors too. When they see that you're really in the character, they respond to that too, I would imagine.
Sure. Yeah. It always takes two to tango, I think. You're only as good as your scene partner, in my opinion. So you got to really hope you're playing with somebody fun.
Yeah, that's great. And speaking of playing with people fun, your first movie, Honeymoon with Mom, you got to play opposite Shelley Long.
Yes, I did.
Was that a great experience for you?
It was really fun. It was my first, I think, as you said, my first leading role in a movie. And Shelley was really lovely, and she has a daughter. And so we were able to connect quite a bit. And I'm very, very close to my mom, whereas my character was not very close to her mom. And then over the course of the movie, if you can imagine what happens, I'm not giving anything away, they become closer. But my character's left at the altar, but I've got these tickets to this vacation destination, and so my mom comes with me. Everyone's romantic dream, right? So
yes, definitely.
But we shot in Turks and Caicos. And that was rad. I remember I got to go scuba diving with our director and some of the cast, and it was great. It was a really, really fun experience, and a very just supportive experience in working, having that big of a role in a comedic film with, one of the greats, with Shelley.
Yeah, I mean, anybody who's ever watched Cheers just has to fall in love with Shelley Long. I mean, as they used
Indeed.
to say, she was America's sweetheart back in those days. I mean, she was a
Yeah.
huge, huge star. It's great comic timing, and so that just must have been a joy. Now,
Yeah.
speaking of honeymoons, of course, you're since married, and thankfully you got to go on your real life honeymoon with your real life husband.
Yeah.
And now you guys have two kids. Congratulations. Just wondering, balancing, your motherhood and having kids, because you played CJ on Fuller House, but didn't weren't you pregnant during one of the seasons?
I was, well, let's see, I have a 4.5-year-old and a just turned 3-year-old. They're a year and a half apart. So when Ford, my older one, was 4 months old, I started Fuller. It was season 2 that I came in on, their first episode. And I mean, I remember that, like, pumping in my trailer. I mean, it was hard
Wow.
having a 4-month old. Got through season 2, and then surprise, I got pregnant between seasons 2 and season 3, and they were building this whole season around this big wedding that was supposed to be Steve's and my wedding. As you can see here, that's a picture of us. And Steve and I get married in Tokyo, except we don't get married. The wedding's called off. I'm like left at the altar a lot.
That seems to be a theme with you.
Just
But
realizing that.
thankfully, it
That's part of
happens to you in your work and not in your life.
No, it's not. It never happened in real life, and I think this one's a keeper. I don't plan on getting married again. So
Good.
anyway, yeah. So anyway, there's this big episode where most of the cast goes to Tokyo, and we actually went to Tokyo. So I shot a couple of the episodes early on in the season, and then I was off for like 2 months, the last month of my pregnancy, and then that next month I had my baby on the 4th of July, baby Bo.
Oh,
And
wow.
4 weeks later to the day, I took him to Tokyo with me and shot my big wedding episode and did this whole thing in Japan. So my 1.5-year-old stayed home with my husband and his mother, and then my mother came with me, and my father ended up surprising us and meeting us there, which was really nice. So I got the help of the grandparents, and they got to be with the baby, and we were there for like 10 days. And then came
Wow,
back.
it
That
wasn't
was a
quite
cool
honeymoon
experience.
with mom, but it was something to that
Yeah.
effect. As she looked after your baby and you went to work. Wow, that's
Yeah.
incredible to, give birth, and then 4 weeks later you're in Japan shooting another wedding scene, yet another wedding scene. Um,
Yeah, no, it was nuts. It was really nuts. It was, I look back on that and I'm like, how in the world you just do, you just
yeah,
like, got to do it, got to keep going. And anyway, it was
and
nuts,
and
but it was
and
a
of course,
rewarding experience.
yeah, great. And of course, it's that's a Netflix show, and a very, very popular Netflix show,
Mm.
might I add, as is Teenage Bounty Hunters. And
Yeah.
I predict, and a lot of the reviews predict, that this will become something that'll be remembered for a very long time. I wonder, how is it, because you've worked a lot on network television, and now this is your second Netflix series. Do you
Mhm.
have more freedom working on a Netflix series than you would on commercial television?
1,000%. Yeah.
Really?
I mean, I can't really, I was going to say if I could choose to never work for anyone but Netflix again, that is what I would do.
Yeah.
But that saying, if anyone's out there watching and wants to hire me on something else, hey, if I'm available, we'll work for hire. That said, no, Netflix is awesome. I mean, Fuller House is a multicam sitcom with a live studio audience. And in a multicam sitcom, you still have your rehearsals at the end of the week. You rehearse all week, and at the end of the week, you rehearse in front of. There's one day where you rehearse in front of the studio executives, and then they give their notes, and then you rehearse in front of network executives, and they give their notes, and then by the end of the week, you're shooting the show. So you still have a fair amount of studio and network interference. And a lot of times, that can be a good thing. A lot of times they're hired for a very good reason and they're good at their jobs, and a lot of times they're not.
Yeah.
And they're just sort of making things more complicated than they need to be a lot of times. I think a lot of people are scared and just trying to keep their job. And,
Yeah.
there's sometimes a lot of people that try to over direct when they are not directors. That said, on Teenage Bounty Hunters, it was extraordinary. I have never worked on something like that. We were in Atlanta shooting, and I mean, some Netflix execs came out a couple of times, and they're smart, wonderful, capable people. I'm sure gave some really great input, but for the most part, it really seemed like they left us alone to do our thing. They let the creatives be creative, and I think that's one of the reasons it's such a good show. Is it isn't overproduced. It's just produced well. And of course, Gingy Cohen is our exec producer, and she created Orange is the New Black, and she was the exec producer on Glow, and she did Weeds back on Showtime back in the day, and she has a history of making hits. She knows how to get things edited correctly and make it work, and she did with this.
Yeah, so the execs know they're in good hands. And of course, the tone of the show, too, through the whole season, I got addicted. I watched the pilot, and then I was like, I cannot stop. The tone is consistent right through the whole show. I will say there's a kind of, in the middle, I think, well, this is a little bit too much about teenagers, like round about episode 5 or 6. I'm like, well, there's a lot of teenage problems here that I can't really relate to. And then something happens with your character at the end of, like, is it episode 5 or 6? And I go, what? And I wish I could tell people where your character goes, but it's like the end of Planet of the Apes, where you cannot tell anybody. They just have to find out for themselves.
No, don't ruin it.
No, did you know in the beginning that that's where your character was going, or was it a surprise to you?
I did. I actually had a sit-down conversation about 15 minutes before our first table read. The whole cast had flown into Atlanta like the day before, day of. And I sat down with our creator, Kathleen Jordan, who is the bomb, just the coolest, kindest, most awesome human.
Wow, great.
And she's just wonderful. So she and Robert Sutup, who's also fantastic, he was show running with Kathleen, and our director, Jesse Poole, who has won quite a few Emmys and done Girls and a bunch of other things, really understands the world. The three of us, there are 4 of us, I sat down with the 3 of them, and we all talked about where my character was going, because at the end of the pilot, you see, and I can say this because it's just the very beginning of the show, but at the very end of the pilot, you see a wanted poster on the bounty hunter thing. It zooms in, and you can see that's me. Yeah. And I'm this very sort of well-to-do Atlanta Buckhead mom. So you think the whole season, what is Debbie's secret? And by episode 10, we find out, and it's awesome. It's an actor's dream, and I had the best time of my life creatively getting to bring her to life.
Well, you can see that, and especially towards the end of the season, how you embrace that character. Again, let's not talk more about it, because people need to see this series. It is really amazing. Now, I want to talk a little bit about your singing, because you're from Memphis, Tennessee, so I assume there was a lot of pressure on you to become a singer. There's so much music in that part of the world now. One of the things that I've noticed, and of course we've worked together on a couple of soundtracks, is your ability to do harmony without, it seems to me, without even thinking. Now, as somebody who cannot do harmony, who can only sing the melody, and I'm lucky if I can do that, I want to know, how is it, how can I do this? Or is it just a God-given gift that I was absent the day God was giving out those gifts?
Funny. First off, you're very sweet. Thank you. I've thought about that before and wondered why it's so natural for me to find the harmony. In fact, even more so than the melody a lot of time. I'll hear something and I will actually start singing a harmony on a brand new song I've heard right away.
Wow.
And I think that part of it is, so when I was young growing up, I was in the glee clubs and the choirs and all that good stuff. And at the time, my range really was from first soprano to alto. I had, what I wouldn't do for that range still. I am not a first soprano anymore. Can maybe get some mezzo soprano in there, but I'm really an alto now. But I was all over the map at the time. But because there are so many females who are sopranos and not as many that are altos, I think I was always put in the alto. So I'd get a solo or something, and it would be a soprano, or it would be any of the parts. But for all of the rest of the songs, the alto group I think would be so weak that the directors would generally just put me in the alto part. And so I feel like that must have just been the training that I
Yeah.
had as a kid, always
Wow.
learning the alto part and always learning the harmonies. And so I just sort of naturally go there now. And I don't know. I
Well,
love it. I
it's
actually
a
love singing the harmonies,
it's a
finding
great
harmonies.
skill to have, and a lot of my singer friends and a lot, I'm sure, the singers, the musicians that are watching tonight, I certainly, I think if I can speak for them, we wish that we were just able to do it so organically. And
Oh,
we're actually going to have a little sample of your singing in just a moment, which,
oh, are
yes, it
we?
may be shocking to you. And as you know, you and I could talk all night, but unfortunately, we do have to move on. But we are going to finish this segment with playing a short little clip from Choosing Signs, in which, of course, you were featured as lead vocalist on most of the songs in the film. And let me say, the
Mm.
film does greatly benefit from your inclusion. And I know, having directed the film, and also, I want to thank you.
And also being the lead male vocalist, and we got to play together and sing
Yes, we did.
together. So there's that.
I have to tell you, it was one of the most joyous experience for me that summer when we just kind of hung out and we were experimenting with all that music and just singing different songs. And I think we recorded way more than actually ended up in the film because we
Yeah,
we
we
were
just
in the
jammed.
what's that?
We just jammed.
I know it was wonderful,
That
and
first
and
one, it
you
was
were
great. I
you
had
were
no kids.
Yes, you could come over. We could just hang out all day. Well,
Yeah.
I remember actually, and I know we do have to move on, but I have to say this. I remember one time you had just booked a movie, and I think the film was scheduled to be released at a festival, like in a few weeks or something. And I
Okay.
was putting
Uh-huh.
down the final vocals, and you were going to come over, and we were going to put the final vocals that day. And then you called me and said, "I have to get on a plane tonight because I just booked a movie in New York City." And I
Oh
actually
God, that's funny.
I
Yeah, no, I
went to
remember that now. Yeah.
yeah, and I went to your place with a microphone and a portable recorder, and we put
Yes,
we
I remember that.
yeah we put the vocals down while you were packing your suitcase. It was the funniest thing,
Yep.
and that's what ended up in the movie.
I have not thought about that in ages, Owen. I'm so glad you brought that up. That is so funny. Yeah, I was literally like packing to go shoot a movie for the next 6 weeks or whatever. We're like, okay,
Yeah,
stop. So we're gonna okay, stop. Let me get
it
the
was a
socks.
lot of fun, and I hope we get to do it again. And again, thank you so much, Virginia, for chatting us tonight. It's just been a joy, and I hope
It's
we get a
been a
chance to
joy
chat
for me
again
too.
soon.
Oh, thanks, love. Thanks for having me. This was lots of fun. Big kisses to you. Mwah.
You too, my dear. Thank you. And here is a short clip from one of the many songs that Virginia Williams performs on the award-winning soundtrack of the film Choosing Signs. The song is called I Cannot Feel the Way. This is Virginia Williams.
I wonder if the time has come, if I ever really knew you. I wonder through this innocence that I had means to cure you. I curse the hand of fate. I listen
Excuse me, sir.
to
There's a missing.
I'll find a way.
Hey, excuse me.
somehow.
Would you have seen this fella anywhere?
Oh, sometimes I cannot feel the weight. Oh, sometimes I just long to hold you near.
Jennifer? Well, that was Virginia Williams, both on lead vocals and backing vocals, harmonizing with herself on a song written by Owen Dara. That's probably somebody you never heard of, so don't bother even looking them up. No point wasting your time doing something like that. But do be sure to check out the Netflix series Teenage Bounty Hunters, now in its very first season. It's absolutely superb. And without giving away too much, by the end of season 1, you will be dying for season 2 to come along, just so you can find out what is going to happen with Virginia's character next. And speaking of characters, coming up next, we have the honor of presenting to you a never before seen music video, which is the result of a collaboration between two artists, both of whom also happen to be among my favorite characters. I spoke to them both just a couple of days ago in an interview that we pre-recorded for tonight's show, which we're delighted to play for you this evening here on Songs and Sit Downs. Before we do, I should remind you that we do have a tip jar, and if you feel like you want to contribute something and you have the means, please do. If not, as I always say, we're very happy to have you with us, and we appreciate your tuning in this evening. And here now is the interview that just a few days ago I had the pleasure of recording with Pat Nason and JJ Shock. Enjoy. Coming up next, we have a world premiere event of a video featuring a newly released song by the inimitable Pat Nason. Pat was a guest on a recent episode of Songs and Sit-Downs, and if you happen to catch that particular show, you'll know that he's not only a great singer-songwriter, but also a very engaging and entertaining personality. Known in the music community as the People's Brother, and by the way, known in the Play-By Mansion as simply Nace, but that's a whole other story, Pat is a favourite performer amongst many of his peers. With a musical style dubbed as relaxed fit country, Pat's range of songs take his audiences on a journey of observation, hilarity, and self-reflection. His latest EP, Here and Now, is no exception. Released in March this year, this 5-track album features Pat accompanied by some of LA's finest musicians, including David Fry, Brian Mertens, Fish Almos, Robbie Wilson, Ed Tree, Chad Watson, David Raven, Matt Margucci, and our very own JJ Shock. In fact, JJ not only played multiple instruments on the recording and served as the album's producer and sound engineer, but also created the video we'll have the honour of premiering in just a little while. JJ is a true Renaissance man, a musician, writer, filmmaker, inventor, and a very gifted composer who has been writing music and songs ever since he was a child. He's had a varied music career, engaging in a number of co-writes, including with Maurice White of Earth, Wind and Fire. He's recorded with the Gap Band, and as a live performer, he's opened for Stevie Nicks, Crosby, Stills and Nash, Jackson Browne, Stevie Wonder, Linda Ronstadt, Bob Dylan, Tom Petty, Taj Mahal, and Gil Scott-Heron. Just a couple of little-known artists that you've probably never even heard of. JJ also composed music for dozens of films and TV commercials. He's produced and mixed albums for several artists, including Tony Elman, and of course, as I mentioned earlier, our other upcoming guest this evening, Pat Nason. JJ and Pat's most recent collaboration, Here and Now, concludes with the very compelling and masterfully executed song, A Long Night Coming, which is the track featured in the video we're about to premiere, right here on Songs and Sit-Downs. But before we do, let's meet the artists behind the music and the video. Please welcome Pat Nason and JJ Shock. Well, hello to both of you. How are you?
Hi, Owen.
Hey, Owen.
My first question is, Pat, did you have much say on the choice of musicians, or did you hand that all over to JJ?
The band that's on the record, we had the advantage of having played the song out on shows 4 or 5 times. So we found a number of groups. And when we went in to make the record, I got as many of the band involved in it as I could, because we had some limitations that we had to work with. So, but David Fry brought major chops. Brian and Robbie brought that groove, and JJ did on the record that he hadn't done live, but he discovered things about the song in live performances that directly led to what he's doing on the record. There's that kind of is it a Wurlitzer sound on the keyboard, JJ?
Yeah, it's a Wurlitzer piano and an organ. Yeah.
Yeah. And it gives it a kind of a funk, almost a ethereal, spiritual bed. That's kind of neat. And I think that's as much as anything else. That's what makes you want to go like that.
Yeah. What was the origin and the inspiration for you to write this?
I think the song, it does a pretty good job of describing the mess that we're in, and also describing the sort of kind of fundamental law of nature, isn't it, that nothing lasts forever. I mean, and you can count on me to remind myself of that all the time. There was a time when humanity didn't exist, and the day is going to come. It's just you can't get around it. I just don't want to be there when it happens, but the day is going to come when humanity isn't going to exist any longer. So there's that, and I didn't make that up. I'm not bringing gloom. I'm just pointing at it.
Yeah, which is what artists do, really, right? They reflect life and reality and truth. And one of the things too, as well as this funky beat that we were talking about that gives it this kind of this lift, is the video also shows the potential for positivity, right? And there's hope in the video. So JJ, when you were doing the video, your choice of images, first of all, what did you think that you wanted to bring to the song through the video?
Pat and I had a lot of discussions about the concept, how we wanted to see the video, and it was really important during those discussions that we show kind of the doom and gloom of what's happening, but also that let's live life to its fullest. Let's be hopeful. Let's make everything actually end up optimistic.
What we did, we talked a lot about that, and to me, what's interesting about it is that we really tried very, very hard to show, like JJ just said, about the best things in life, and to sort of remind anybody who's too pessimistic that there are things worth fighting for. Surrender is not an option, right? So eventually, it's going to happen eventually, but in the meantime. The question before us, and I don't know who said this, a million philosophers have said it, but in the meantime, the only question is, what are we going to do with our time? And the song doesn't come anywhere near explicitly saying that. It doesn't even hint at it. The song is just gloomy. It's just all downbeat. So what we went for in the video was to find a counter position, a counter force and we worked really, really hard to get that in there. And it turns out that no matter what we did, it's a gloomy song. There's no way around that. But the efforts that we made to find that balance in the visual presentation really paid off, because I can't imagine what it would look like if we hadn't done that. It would be by the end of it, people would stop the video in the middle to go turn on the engine in the garage.
And also, the images are so compelling. The image of the sunflowers, and there's a woman dancing, and then there's a sign that you've put on there, and it says eviction and foreclosure. JJ, did you come up with that image?
It's kind of a dream sequence, and dream sequences don't necessarily make logical sense, but it's kind of this happy flowery scene with this irony going on. It's as dreams sometimes do. You're running through flowers while you're dreading somebody chasing you or upcoming doom.
And then the other image that I recall is, it's early on in the video where you have, like, it's a cemetery and you see these headstones, and there's the horsemen. So I guess, is this the coming of the apocalypse? Is this what it's signaling?
These are actually Confederate statues.
Wow, which adds a whole other layer.
Look at what just happened. See, so it was very, it was specifically intended to project Confederate monuments, but a viewer looked at it and saw cemetery. Didn't see specifically the Confederate part of it. That's how rich this thing is. JJ has come up with image upon image upon image that you really can kind of see in multiple ways. And just to be clear, 80 to 85% of this is JJ. Talking about all the sweat equity, the really deep dive research to get just the right images and everything. We collaborated some, and we had some help from Dolly and from Kathy. But I'd say 85% might be a conservative estimate. But this is JJ's video.
Wow! Well, congratulations on that. And I feel like the song's time has come now, because all those images are so pertinent. We were talking about the Confederate statues. I mean, and then of course there's the tragedy of children in cages because of this immigration situation, and that's brought into it. I wanted to talk about also an image that kind of blew me away each time that I watch the video now, is the one where there's people toasting wine, and then there's the images of the money. Do you want to talk a little bit about that image?
I have to talk about the lyric line first. Because the lyric line actually is, for every seed you'd ever sown. So you're right. That image is so perfect. Went from the ICE agent and the little boy in the red jacket, and moving along, and you see hundreds, and you see these women toasting at a winery, I guess. And then that goes into the scene of a homeless camp outside of the Veterans Administration over here in West LA.
Very interesting. It's a very compelling video and song, and congratulations to both of you on your collaboration. And what's exciting now is we actually get to present it to the world in just a moment. Before we do, I want to thank you, both you guys, for talking to us today, and we very much look forward to seeing more of your stellar work in the future, both as individuals and as a team.
Thank you, Owen.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Owen.
My pleasure. And now, the moment that many of us have been waiting for quite a while. This is the world premiere of the official music video for the Pat Nason original song, A Long Night Coming.
There's a long night coming, a long night dead ahead. Nobody knows when, nobody can say, but sure as the night follows the day, the good times will be over, and the good things in the past, and all your darkest fears are gonna come for you at last. Can't you hear the warning, the voices in your head? There's a long night coming dead ahead. And there's a cold day coming further on down the road. Nothing you do, nothing you say can keep it from coming or turn it away. No matter where you run to or how you try to hide, you'll never outrun the things you've done. You'll keep them deep inside, and you've got to reap the harvest for every seed you'd ever sowed. And there's a cold day coming down the road. Did you ever think we'd live to see the day when everything around us would just turn to dust, blow away? But there's hard times coming, come high water or hell. Maybe tomorrow, maybe next year, sooner or later hard times will be here, and the sun won't go on shining, and the birds refuse to fly. Everything will turn brown when it all goes down, and no one will know why. And we'll never miss the water until we dried up that last well. And there's hard times coming, high water hell. Did you ever think we'd live to see the day when everything around us would just turn to dust and blow away? But there's a long night coming, a long night dead ahead. Nobody knows when, nobody can say, but sure as the night follows the day, nothing lasts forever, and all good things must pass, and there'll be nothing to hold on to, and the time is fading fast. So tie up all your loose ends and get all your goodbyes said. There's a long night coming dead ahead. There's a long night coming dead ahead. There's a long night coming dead ahead.
And there it is. That was the Pat Nason song, A Long Night Coming, from his excellent new EP, Here and Now, produced by JJ Shock. The video was also created and directed by JJ Shock, and if you'd like to see more videos featuring Pat and listen to more of his songs from his multiple albums, go to patnasonsongs.com. And thank you, Dolly, for editing that interview and making us all sound a little more intelligent than we are. You cut out some of the waffle that we all went on with during that interview. So we very much appreciate you, Dolly Ramirez, and of course Pat Nason and JJ Shock. Great job all around. And of course, everybody who tuned in for that video and for our previous guest, Virginia Williams. Before we leave you tonight, I want to let you know about some upcoming virtual shows. We have on Saturday, September 5th at 3 p.m. a celebration of life and music of Emmett Rhodes. And Emmett Rhodes was the guy that was known as the one-man Beatles, extremely talented singer-songwriter who passed away recently. And that's going to be hosted by Terry Paul Rowland. And I think that's going to be a great show with some special guests that will be doing Emmett Rhodes music. And then on Sunday, September 6th at 10 a.m., Matt Bunson is going to be back for his 10 at 10. He's going to be in pop hits from 1967 to 73, and that's always fun on a Sunday morning. Come check that out. And then Sunday, September 13th at 6:30, we're back with our second Sunday Songwriter Series, a showcase. I'll be back in this chair hosting that, and I always look forward to hosting that because we have a lot of people submit some songs, some videos of songs, and it's always a great experience. If you'd like to be part of it, and if you'd like to submit a song, you can go to divinerebelmusic.com/showcase, and it will tell you all the details of how to become part of that. We would absolutely love to hear from you, but the deadline is September 10th. Now, there's a theme this coming month, so we're trying that out. And the theme is colors. Now, whatever that means to you, you can include that in your song or not. It's completely optional. We are actually going to take some time off, as I mentioned earlier, from Songs and Sit-Downs. We will be around in September for the other shows, but Songs and Sit-Downs will be on hiatus from September and through September, and we'll be returning in the beginning of October. And we look forward to seeing you, and I hope you will all come back for that. More about that later on. We want to thank everybody who's involved in the show, who made this show possible. Thank you, Dolly, JJ, Jessica. A big thank you to our special guests, Virginia Williams, JJ Shock, and Pat Nason. It was really an absolute pleasure having all of our guests on the show this evening. And of course, we'd like to extend a big thank you to you, our audience, for tuning in to this, our 18th and final show of the season. As I said, we'll be back in October with another episode of Songs and Sit-Downs, and we very much look forward to seeing you then. And in the meantime, we wish you the best. Please stay safe and be kind.
When nobody can say, but sure as the night follows the day, nothing lasts forever, and all good things must pass, and there'll be nothing to hold on